Well, let's get back to the issue of China interference. Recently, a group of 10 MPs traveled to Taiwan where they met with local officials. Taiwan asserts its independence, but Beijing insists it is a part of the People's Republic of China. And as a result, Taiwan battles Chinese interference and the threat of it on a daily basis. An interesting reality considering what is happening in this country right now. Well, with more on their visit to Taiwan, we're now joined by the Liberal MP for Scarborough-Guildwood in Toronto, John McKay. He's also the chair of the Parliamentary Committee on National Defence. Michael Chong is Conservative MP for the riding of Wellington-Halton Hills in Ontario, also the vice chair of the Special Committee on Canada and the People's Republic. And Lindsay Mathyssen is the NDP's Deputy House Leader and the MP for the riding of London-Fanshawe. Hello to the three of you.
Michael.
Michael. Hi there. Mr. McKay, I'll get you to start us off here because obviously Canada-China relations not at a high point currently. Were you at all concerned that your presence in Taiwan would further strain the relationship between Beijing and Ottawa?
Not really. Beijing has kidnapped our citizens. Beijing runs influence operations in our universities. Beijing runs intimidation operations in police stations. They regularly steal all kinds of intellectual property, run balloons over our airspace, put buoys in our oceans. So, no, I was not concerned about what Beijing would think. I was far more concerned about expressing some solidarity with the Taiwanese people who are resisting the aggression of Beijing. Beijing wishes to turn us all into vassal states, and Taiwan has, over the years, shown its ability to resist the aggression of the PRC.
Mm-hmm. Now, Mr. Chong, Taiwan's existence is increasingly coming up against China's global and regional ambitions. I'm wondering, as we hear that litany of activities from Mr. McKay, was part of this trip aimed at finding out what Taiwan needs to maintain its independence?
Yeah, part of this trip was to learn what Canada can do, both to strengthen our own defense and security here at home, and to strengthen the defense and security of other democracies, including Taiwan. The fact of the matter is that the Russian invasion of Ukraine a year ago proved the need for democracies to work much more closely together in a range of areas, from trade and investments to supply chains to defense and security, in order to ensure that authoritarian states don't continue to further their aggression. As you know, President Xi of the People's Republic of China and President Putin of the Russian Federation have signed an autocratic pact promising to back each other up with respect to both Ukraine and Taiwan. And so it's more important than ever that democracies like Canada and Taiwan work more closely together. I might add the final point here. Taiwan is consequential. Taiwan produces over 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors. And what the pandemic proved to all of us is how important semiconductors are in our day-to-day lives. The disruption to semiconductor supply chains during the pandemic created havoc in supply chains and consumer products here at home. And so we need to ensure Taiwan's defense and security. It's vital not just for our principles and values, but it's vital for our economy as well.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Mathyssen, as we talk about relations with Beijing, part of the reason why they are at a low, of course, has to do with foreign interference in Canadian democracy. Taiwan, as I said right off the bat, deals with Beijing on a daily basis. How important was this visit on that front?
It was absolutely vital, actually, in terms of us being able to talk to some of those key officials, those key ministers that have been dealing with this for a lot longer, or in far more intense circumstances, for us to learn from them, to listen to them, to figure out how we can be a part of that greater, stronger partnership. All of that was key parts of what we went to learn and to achieve. And I think that we had really incredible open conversations. They were the officials that we met with were very excited by our support, by the report that was presented by the Canada-China Parliamentary Committee, and we made some really long-lasting, I think, relationships and connections as part of that trip.
Mr. McKay, when it comes to lessons learned about foreign interference, what do you think Canada needs to learn from Taiwan?
We have a lot to learn. We have a lot to learn on the management of digital information, particularly the cyber attacks that are a daily fact of life in Taiwan. I believe the minister said they had 1 million attacks a day. We have a lot to learn in terms of the coordination of the response to those attacks. We have a lot to learn in terms of issues of disclosure of the attacks. So those, on the cyber side of it, those are immediate lessons to be learned. On the misinformation, disinformation side of the equation, the Taiwanese have a unique an interesting way of managing the relentless amount of misinformation and disinformation that comes out of the PRC. And they have a response time, largely run by NGOs, that they target for a 2-hour response. And in fact, what I'm told is that they generally have a response out within an hour.
Mr. Chong, what would you answer to that? Because, you know, what's interesting about this visit is the multi-party approach and the agreement that seems to be emerging out of this one trip to Taiwan.
Well, I agree with John McKay on the lessons that we can learn from the Taiwanese government. They are at the forefront of Beijing's meddling, of Beijing's foreign interference threat activities, whether it comes in the form of cyber attacks, whether it comes in the form of disinformation. They are at the forefront and have been for years. It's a particular problem for the Taiwan government because in both Taiwan and the People's Republic of China, Mandarin is the native language. And so Beijing is relentless in spreading propaganda and disinformation. But one of the interesting things that I learned during the trip was that they have taken a very principled approach to tackling this disinformation. It's based on the values that Canada and Taiwan share, a belief in free expression, fundamental freedom of speech, freedom of the press. And what they've done is taken a very bottom-up approach to instill in Taiwanese society, beginning in the school system, to build a resilience on disinformation. They have not just media literacy training in their education system, they call it media competency training. So it's not just to instill in citizens the idea that they are consumers of information, but to make them think critically about the type of information they are consuming so that they can make their own informed choices about whether information is fact-based or whether it's disinformation. So instead of controlling the social media companies using the coercive power of the state from the top down, they instead build resilience from the bottom up. And that's one of the important takeaways that I gleaned from our trip to Taiwan, and I think those are lessons that could be applied here in Canada.
Yeah. Ms. Mathyssen, last minute to you. What do you hope comes out of this visit?
Well, again, I think that this is that strengthening of the relationships, the continuing of those conversations. The trade talks that I know that the people in Taiwan want to continue to have with Canada as part of that larger multilateral community. They want the support that Canada can provide. They want to be able to engage further in that more larger global conversation. And so I think that we can continue to work on those relationships. And again, this was about listening to what the people of Taiwan want for Taiwan. And so we can continue to support that and just work on all the things. We have a lot of actual work to do, as Michael had pointed out, and John had pointed out, in terms of what we learned from them. We have a lot of catching up to do on how to manage our own dealings with foreign interference and cybersecurity. So we're going to learn just as much from them and listen to them in part of that relationship building.
Okay, well, thank you for the time tonight, Lindsay Mathyssen, John McKay, Michael Chong. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much.